mobile starting to play a role in this in some way. So now with the proliferation of different channels and ways to reach the consumer, how do you reach that consumer, and how are they responding to that in the most effective way? Anyone who wants to kind of respond to that?
I mean, I'll start with it's access, right? Mobile devices are portable. They're with you 24/7. Okay, how many people sleep with their phone next to their nightstand or something? And they use it as an alarm, right? So it's becoming an extension, I think, to a lot of folks. But it's also managing their lives, communication, etc. It keeps them engaged with on the social side. So I think definitely mobile is now a more intimate part of you. It travels with you everywhere, even in the restaurant. So now it's basically a moving billboard for a lot of brands, right? They see that as
yeah, just to kind of bounce off of what Mario said, I mean, in the retail space, I think we see the same thing. Consumers are a lot savvier than they were, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Today, I think Google was like a month-old company, and even search wasn't very ubiquitous back then. But now, like, you can see shoppers in the store scan a QR code or barcode for a product, get product reviews, even get pricing from nearby retailers and so forth. So I think what that's done in the retail space is really, I think consumers, they have a tendency to filter out a lot. So if you're not speaking to them in a relevant way in the right channels, then you're not really reaching them.
The quote that I think about a lot with mobile is the medium is the message. And I think that mobile is very different from all of the types of billboards that came before it. It can be much more interactive. There's a lot of things that we can do on our phones that we can't do with the television, that we can't do with our computer, that we can't do with tablets and phones. I don't know if that debate's already happened at this conference at some point, which one's mobile and which one's not. But it's a very unique platform, and I think that we're just now scratching the surface as to how we can use it in an effective way to really connect with consumers.
I remember back when we started in '95 with the websites, and the big comment was, well, how many websites could there possibly be? What would people really want to do on the internet? And I'm starting to hear similar backlash around mobile, in that you go to Hackathon and people go, well, why are you making this a mobile app? I mean, how many mobile apps could there be? And I think we'll end up with probably more mobile apps and mobile behavior than there are websites when it's all said and done. It's just a tsunami wave with every company I'm interacting with. Even if they don't have a mobile site, 40% of their users are coming to them through mobile. So it's crazy.
Rob, you spoke about how the medium is the message, which is really important. And to actually keep people's attention today, I think it's kind of critical to create really gripping content. And to actually keep, because again, we have 350 different channels and consumers being barraged by information. So what are some of the key insights or some of the key best forms of content that you've seen that have engaged people on mobile from an ad perspective?
So, I mean, I think that there's probably maybe 10 or 15 companies that I'm aware of that are really trying to push it when it comes to mobile advertising. I think, people, there's a lot of jargon, and I think that some of it's yet to be defined, like what's native. But when we think about native, we think about making advertising contextual. So how can it look and feel like something that you're interacting with? So I'm a big fan of hard numbers. We did a case study recently with Time Warner and a Zynga game where we took a normal interstitial ad that was in Time, that we were working with Time Warner with, we put it into a Zynga game in our network, and it got like a 0.1% engagement rate. This particular ad was an email collection from who wanted to get an offer from Time Warner. Once we made it look and feel like part of the game without actually changing any of the offer itself, it got a 1.9% engagement. That's 19 times increase.
Wow.
And that was before we successfully lobbied Time Warner to change the offer to be something more compelling. So, I mean, we're seeing engagement rates sometimes of 40%, 50%, 60% with some of our ad units. That's incredible. I mean, like, they're not even units on the web that take over the whole screen the same way that an interstitial does on a phone. So I think that as I said before, we're just now beginning to scratch the surface. How can we take this device and play to the strengths, whether it's a phone or a tablet?
Lou, maybe perhaps this is a question for you. How would you say that the proliferation of well over 350 online channels today influences your buying decisions? So are you more likely to go all out and spend it on a TV campaign because you may not have the engagement but you'll have massive reach? Or are you more likely to distribute those dollars? And what are the key indices for actually that decision for distribution, for distributing those dollars across a variety of different platforms?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of stuff out there, like articles about how mass media is dead and so forth, but I don't think, at least in the short term, we'd ever move completely away from traditional media. A lot of the campaigns we run, it's a core part of our marketing investment, but the trend that I see is definitely brands are investing a lot more into digital and mobile. Like that's where the consumer is. That's how the consumer is interacting and engaging. And like you were saying, like it's more engaging than seeing like a banner ad. It's a way to communicate with the consumer in a different way, where it's just a TV spot. So I think it's challenging for a lot of marketers because with the proliferation of all those channels, that you have that many buying choices as well. So,
but also it's measurable, right? I mean, that's the difference between a billboard and digital, and that's a scary thing for agencies because they can't bullshit you anymore. But yeah, because now because it also becomes highly measurable, and that's what I think that's why your guys are starting to push into that direction.
No, I mean that's a really great point because you can see the engagement numbers, you can see how people are engaging with it, you can see how many people are sharing it and so forth, where in traditional mass media you have like CPM and GRPs and how many people you're reaching, but how many people are actually clicking through, paying attention, sharing it and so forth. So that's a really good point. And I know brands are very data hungry. They like to make decisions looking at data, so providing those type of analytics is definitely a plus.
How many people in the audience are developers or work on that side of business? How many people here are brands? If you're a brand, just cover your ears for a moment, please, for me. But we do campaigns that brands pay for where we charge on an action basis, where we're making $200 CPM and sharing half of that with our developers. That's not an everyday campaign, but that's not happening. That's not happening in other forms of media.
Lou, you can go now.
The brands are getting what they want. They're getting people to engage with their actual product, with the brand. I mean, that's the goal, especially when you're driving a consumer towards consideration, which is generally what we're talking about when we're talking about mobile advertising.
But what type of engagement really matters? So is it a view through? So it's not just 30 seconds of a video. Is it sharing that content with any of the user's social network? Is it clicking through then an action towards the site that's more of a CPA? Like what type of action are brands looking for that you see?
I mean, I can answer this question based on my experience.
Yeah.
No matter what we go out and sell and all the cool things we can do and all the cool things that brands say that they want to do, generally they're buying four things. They're buying video views, they're buying like email, customer acquisition, they're buying installs, and they're buying rich media experiences. That's it. Those are the four things. And maybe there's another one that's a smaller one, but startups are generally just packaging these four things in different ways and trying to charge different prices for it. But that's all that, like when the agency is filling out their Excel spreadsheet, those are the things that are on the Excel spreadsheet that they need to deliver back to the brand. So it's sort of like, how can we come up with creative ways to get the engagement that they want to put into their Excel spreadsheet, which can be, I think, a little bit limiting, but once in a while you come up with a brand that really does want to do something interesting. Like we're working on some really cool stuff with Nora, which I think is a brand that wants to push it a little bit. So I think that there'll be a lot of rewards for brands who take the initiative and take the risk and try new things.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different objectives depending on who you ask in terms of marketing. Like I mentioned, I deal more on the retail side, so our objectives are a little different. We want to communicate brand equity in our campaigns, but we're also interested in moving units and driving foot traffic to our retail customers. So I think whenever you engage with the brand, it's important to kind of set the objectives ahead of time, because on the brand side, you know, a brand manager for Dove, for instance, they may really want to push out a TV spot or a message, and really their core focus is reach and building brand equity, and they don't really have a tie to kind of like a retail promotion where they want a click-through on a coupon or a download. So I think it's important to kind of look at it from the beginning and say, what are the objectives you're trying to achieve versus just, I want to reach everybody, you know?
So if you're a marketer, do a lot of customer development and ensure that you're hitting the target metrics that that specific subdivision of the company is actually interested in looking for. So if you're on the shopper side, that would be, you know, activations, you know, driving, you know, whether it's an online presence towards an in-store activation, or if it's on the brand level, it's more reach and awareness. Would be very, very critical. Speaking about the brand level, we've seen over the past few years that a number of brands have been able to master multi-platform storytelling. So this is storytelling that traditionally would exist in a, you know, 30 to, you know, 60 to 120 second TV spot, but now exists across a variety of different distribution channels, but mostly on mobile. A great example of this is the Chipotle Cultivate campaign from last year, where they had a story-driven TV spot and then had a number of different online tentacles behind that. How important is the mobile platform, which includes tablets, smartphones, and, you know, even Google Glass to a certain extent, or wearables, to storytelling for brands? And how do brands gain an edge in multi-platform storytelling? So Chipotle is a great example. Another big one is Dove, which has used storytelling through interactivity through a number of other indices online to really push and further their message and increase their brand equity and value.
I think, to be realistic, mobile is a great place to start a relationship with a customer. I think a lot of brands, like, we'll have a discussion with a brand where they'll say something to us like, what if we geofence just the areas right outside of our store, and we give a reward, like, right at this one moment after they beat a game or they did X, Y, and Z, and we're thinking, look, there's only so many people who are going to be right by your store playing one of the games in our network, or an app or another. They're just, like, it's a hard thing to do. There are, I mean, it's possible. I think some mobile companies are doing it well, but I think what's more realistic is mobile is, you just have a second with a user. We all know how fast people's attention changes. So when you have that second, what we like to do is try to ask permission from a user to begin a relationship with them. And that's the way we think about mobile, and that's where we think mobile fits in, at least for our strategy. And I think that's a really effective way to use it. You just have a small amount of time, and you have someone's attention for a second, and you can generally figure out, do they want more of what you're offering, or they don't want it at all? If they don't want it at all, we don't bother them again. And I think that's one of the most critical things that we all in this space need to adhere to, which is to really stick to permission-based marketing, and to stick to marketing that we call user-centric, that's not annoying, because I cannot think of a more annoying platform than mobile if it's not used responsibly.
Right. All right.
So, yeah, we go back to the storytelling is, you know, also in the industry, who's heard of the 360, right? You're doing print, TV, mobile, and you're trying to combine all three. And a lot of agencies like, oh, we
that really bad buzz term, transmedia.
Yes. So, I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
I don't know. Ask Jeff.
But what I'm seeing is the call to action is the mobile device, right? How many people have seen the Shazam, like the commercial with, oh, hey, launch Shazam and you get a free song? Who's seen that already on TV, the little Shazam? How many people have used it? Okay, raise your hand if you've used it. If you pull out the app, get Shazam. I can't get it up fast enough. Wow. And so yeah, because I'm not fast enough to get that. but to give you an example, I think that's part of the storytelling, I think, is that you're, you know, again, the device is with you, sitting on the couch, you're fiddling with it while watching TV. I think a lot of the brand engagement that we are seeing, we're seeing a call to action on TV, and we're fulfilling the call to action on a mobile device, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what it's a lot.
So it's looking, so using more traditional platforms to start the story discussion, and then completing that, or maybe the user acquisition cycle on others.
I think that it's just so, I agree that that's how it's usually done now, but I
Yeah.
still think it's a legacy from when brands and agencies were just spending so much on television. I mean, I haven't been to any of the other sessions yet here, but I'm assuming that the stats of mobile media consumption versus ad spend have come up. We 25% of consumption on mobile and 1% of spend for 10 and 2, whatever the numbers that you believe are, there's a huge disparity between where people are consuming media and how much money is being spent on it. And over time, that will obviously even out, but it hasn't yet. And I think agencies, many times, can be pretty lazy and they just keep doing what's worked for them. And I think, again, this is just like another fork in the road where brands that are willing to be innovative and embrace a new platform will benefit, and ones that don't and keep just buying TV over and over, they'll probably suffer.
There's also creepy technology out there. So what the app is doing is listening. There's actually it listens to what you're watching, and then changes the advertising to you can buy out of a TV show. So the banner ad now is tied to what you're engaged with listening with. So whatever app you're engaged with, the advertising changes according to you can buy that out as well.
So it's an instantaneous targeting, so there's inventory there that's just waiting for instantaneous buy, essentially. Of some of the more, I want to spend the kind of latter half of the discussion on some of the more emerging trends, and how marketers and brands today are using them to reach target consumers. So I want to talk about mobile location for a minute. A few years ago, this was heralded as a very big promise. We saw Foursquare, Loop Star, a few others come and go, Gowalla. What is the future of, would you say, of instantaneous location-based apps? Mario seems to be smiling at this one more than the rest of the panel. But this was heralded as an incredible, especially for shopper marketing, a few years ago, but it hasn't really panned out. Foursquare's still struggling. So yeah, any your take on some of the interesting trends that are in the space and why it fails?
So in this one, I was in this trend early. I looked at doing stuff in 2005. I think the app has to add enough value. The one location-based apps that have really taken off are Uber and all the taxi stuff, because it actually gives you enough value that you want it to know where you're at, so the damn taxi can find you. So, but most of the location stuff, I think, provides all the value to the brand or the store, and people just, they don't buy into it. They're just like, well, why should I check in? What's really in it for me? And people say coupon, but that's kind of lame. I mean, you know, okay, maybe. It hasn't worked so far. So I think it's going to be location-based stuff that makes your life appear magical, like Uber does.
Yeah, I mean, I think Will makes a good point about the value to the consumer, because we've tested, the brands, we've tested a lot of things that are out there. There's tons of different apps, Shopkick, Sticky Bits, Punch Card, that are all kind of location-based, that has to do with retail and serving up offers or trying to get you in front of the product to scan to get points that are worth like a fraction of a penny when you calculate the actual value of it. So, I mean, I think really unlocking the potential of location-based technology and it being useful is going to come down to value and incentive.
Well, part of it is, location is a feature, right? And the first startup I was part of in 2000 was focused on location-based services, and we're trying to make an industry out of location-based services, which completely they found fail. But what I started to notice was how maps and even location have changed many of the services we use today, right? From one example is like Yelp, right? It's Yellow Pages. You had it maps to Yellow Pages, and oh my God, it just totally transforms, right? And the same thing, Will had mentioned with Uber, you added where is my taxi? Just having that location information. But also I think so Forever 21. Who shops here at Forever 21? It's my favorite place to shop. By the way, they have nice clothes.
There's a few of you there. I can see someone in the back.
But they have a retail app, and Forever 21, they have location-based notifications. So when you are in the parking lot, bam, you're in San Mateo parking lot, etc. Bam, you get that alert saying, hey, here's a 25% discount. Here's a coupon. And I think that's how also brands are using location to engage, because now it's serendipitous. It's not serendipitous, right? Because you are in the parking lot, and maybe you're on your way there, you go next door. It's not like you are at home and get the coupon, right? So now
that playing into, because of the proximity with the Forever 21 example, or with Marriott's new mobile services drive that they're pursuing at the moment, do you think that even though the value or the incentive may be the same as what earlier iterations were, because it's more location focused and more specific, the barrier to movement or activation is smaller, so will actually motivate the consumer? Or do you think it needs to be like Uber, where it needs to be a service in and of itself, and then it provides, there's, I guess, intrinsic value to that service?
I mean, I love the example of Uber because I think they've done it well. I haven't looked it up before, but I mean, unfortunately, Uber's not a brand that's advertising using location. It's a service.
It's a service, yes.
Right? So I think this is a good time to start to really go through the difference between top of funnel and bottom of funnel advertising, which is, I think, still something that a lot of brands are being educated about. Like, how do you create demand, and then how do you capture that demand? And I think I've seen, Mario, as you just mentioned, that companies are using location to capture demand very well. Like, I'm already in the parking lot, I'm going to incentivize a little bit more of purchase. But I don't know that companies are using location to generate demand effectively yet. I haven't seen that done quite as well. I mean, just by way of example, the most effective targeting we do from a geo perspective is really at the DMA level, just to make sure that there's an actual place to buy whatever we're advertising in that area. That makes a difference. When it comes to targeting, we can target based on a number of different parameters, but the only one that really seems to be a good predictor of our campaign success is disposable income. So I think and so I think that location is similar to that. Like, once you go too granular, we just don't see that, the results being that much better. I think that it's a medium that's still maturing though. With Google mapping the inside of stores, that changes things. I think that will change shopping market significantly. So those type of advances, I think, are going to be interesting.
Okay. Another kind of growing trend that I want to spend some time on is data. So at Buzzstarter, we work with brands and advertisers and aggregate and collect data. A number of brands and advertisers today are aggregating and collecting data. What are some of the more interesting trends that you see in applying insights gained from location on mobile, from instantaneous checkout on mobile, and a number of the other applications that are native to the mobile space, and aggregating that data and then shifting that back? It's a very broad question, but I wanted to leave it broad because I think we can go really deep with it, and we can have a discussion kind of define the parameters of it.
I'll start off with, I think, a good use case.
Please.
Location and footfall. So if you could just Google footfall, and you'll find an awesome Telefonica study in London. And this is now, and also through Momentum, we had the Localizer.
Yes.
Who came out of a Unilever Accelerator out of UK. So very interesting data. So this is what these type of companies are doing now today, factual. Aggregation of location data for users and demographics. So even on an hourly basis. So now what I can do is I can predict in the marina between 11 and 12 in the morning, there's a certain demographic. Yeah. From 5 to 6, there's another demographic. So now I'm aggregating large amounts, huge, sums of data, and now being able to target by the hour what type of demographic is actually going to be in there. And you can use in a lot of this is sourced through Twitter check-ins, Foursquare check-ins, basically the fire hoses from all the social medias, and they're basically now starting to target certain, and they've created, all these different companies have created grids, so you can go by block, and use that insight for targeting. And then that's then given down to the brand or an agency, and they can buy to a demographic for a certain time of day with the location, and just target all those devices that are in that area. So kind of cool stuff.
I think one of the reasons why not as many companies are doing that is because it doesn't work very well. I mean, we've tested that technology. We use some of it. We place a confidence rating on all the data sources that we pull from, and our confidence is low. I mean, from basic tests like, hey, like employee X, will you have your mom log in from Newport Beach knowing that we know exactly who you are, and then we see the It's wrong more often than it's right now. I think as that data gets better, it will become more useful. But, and so it's almost like the ability for us to do it is there if the data was good, but generally speaking, I think the data is sort of shitty. So it's hard to
Now,
do the quality.
Yeah, that brings up a very good point. Now, is the data, the source data, inaccurate because of user input? So nefarious data coming from Facebook and Twitter, meaning I may say I'm living in San Francisco, but I really live in Boise, and that's common. Or is it more nefarious because of the supply chain or the origination of that data and delivery to the advertisers, or combination of both?
I think it's because there are so many points along the chain that you have to use to correlate data to something meaningful, and if any one of those points is off, then the data is off. So for instance, like the way it actually works with many mobile targeting solutions is based on an IP address. Well, if that IP address is coming from the cell phone provider, I mean, if it's a BlackBerry, it could look like it's coming from Canada when the person's in Tennessee. So as soon as that's wrong, you either need to learn a way to predict which sets of data are going to be right or wrong, or there's just too many points along that chain, and with one weak link, you have bad data.
Lou or Will? Take.
I mean, I think your phone knows you better than your mother. It's just people aren't yet willing to share that data. I mean, if I were going to build a dating app today, back in the day, they would go, well, I love to take walks on the beach, but if your phone doesn't go to the beach, then you don't go to the beach. So, I think there's a whole world out there waiting to be unlocked once people have enough confidence that you're not going to share that data inappropriately. And I think we're headed toward that.
I mean, I think that the stats that we see when we look at user opt-in, like who opts in to share their location, it's like 10%. So 10% of people are willfully sharing their data with Apple, for instance. At least that's the number that we see. I don't know what Apple's in.
But the value prop isn't there yet.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm a contrarian. I still think building insight data is going to be highly useful, specifically when you have very, very large service providers in this country and other parts of the world that are gathering that data. And they're warehousing it.
Service providers meaning utilities, like AT&T, Verizon, or meaning Facebook.
I'm talking about operators. Very large projects going on right now that are actually leveraging, and because they're competing with Nielsen, right? They're going to because they know exactly. Nielsen doesn't know what you're looking at all the time.
It's 1,000 boxes around the country.
Yeah, no, you're talking about inaccurate data. I'm talking about. I can tell you where you've been all day. I know what you've been browsing on. I know from your Ubers. I know exactly, right? And so, but you're protected. We're all protected by law in the U.S. But if you can still kind of do some anonymization of the data and still have an idea of where all the websites people go. And you don't want to be able to. Human society is a little
Moving on. This isn't we're not phased. So, last question I want to ask of each one of the panelists before, we may have some time for questions, but I want to get moving, is of all the trends in mobile advertising right now, fast and furious, 10 seconds for each of you. First thing that comes to your mind, what is the most exciting? What is the one that we have to most keep our eye on over the next few years? This is, again, very broad, but first thing that comes to your mind. A few years ago, if you were a South by Southwest, everyone would have said location, location, location. Obviously, that's changed a little bit. Mario, go.
Beyond the banner type of occasion. So
Okay.
That's definitely trending.
Okay, great.
I mean, I think we're still at the point where proliferation is that's the big thing that just happened. Now everybody does have a smartphone. But being a little self-promoting, I think some of the things that we're doing around live calls within an engaging ad, like pulling information from the phone, pulling information from other third-party sources, and making that part of the ad experience, I think that's pretty incredible. And I can answer any questions about it afterwards.
I think from manufacturer's perspective, really it's been kind of like coupon solutions that have been.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Beyond coupons.com or
Yeah, I mean a lot of coupon to card,
Interesting.
other mobile applications that distribute coupons.
Okay.
So for me, it's stuff like Uber. I saw another app where you put down a piece of paper and it shows you a piece of furniture so you can place it around your house. So it's things that didn't exist before that's transforming how we do things.
I want to amend mine, just because I thought of something based on the coupon thing. I think it's payments. Well, I'm not in that space,
Payments.
but yeah, the moment that payments really catch on, that you can use your phone for payments, and I think that's got to be coming. I mean, like in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, that'd be the big thing that I think has changed.
There's a lot of noise in payments, and a lot of the different providers are now trying to unlock payments on phone, go cashless, RFID a few years ago. And again, kind of going back to this, what would you look for as one of the more interesting, exciting trends in the payment space on mobile? That you'd say that is going to be a distinguishing factor for a clear winner, or a selection of clear winners.
I think we just pick a technology. Oh my gosh. That's the biggest one. I think NFC chips, mobile payments, 11 years anniversary in Japan.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not rocket science, guys, but it has to do with there's big players in the industry. But I think it has to have a technology adoption and have all the banks and I think it's retailers, right? Because you have to buy that little device. That's also the picture.
So it's the payment terminal providers. It's the Vericodes people.
It's the mom and pop shop that you have to spend $250 to buy
To
it.
buy the payment terminal. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I want to, if we have 2 minutes for questions, I want to open up the floor to ask our panel anything reasonable. Yeah, please. We have the first question right here. I'll leave it open for a few questions.
Earlier in the panel, you mentioned that there were 4 things that a brand would want to buy, and I'm curious about the state of innovation to convince brands to buy other things. Why is it that a brand wouldn't be interested in buying an audio ad on an app, or interested in buying a virtual good in a game that was modeled after the brand? And what can a brand do to convince an agency that this type of thing is worth buying?
Lou? Or
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, my experience has been that I feel like a lot of brands are still kind of far behind in terms of knowing like what's out there in terms of like cutting edge. Like we've as a company we've organized some digital summits here in like Silicon Valley and met with some startups, but on a continuing basis, like that needs to happen a lot more frequently, and I don't think we're there yet. I have friends who work for other large manufacturers and stuff, and it's kind of the same story, and we rely on agencies a lot to bring those to the table and make those decisions for us. So I think until brands are get out there and start opening their eyes to see like there's a lot more that we can do with our dollars than what the agencies are saying or what traditional media is. Like, but I agree with you. I think we can. Like I've done some programs that were kind of out of the box. It takes a little bit of tough selling to do, but it's possible. I mean, some people are open to it.
But isn't it a volume issue? I mean, you guys got to sell a lot of stuff. It's hard to do something that has just a small impact.
Yeah, I think some of it's like just the big company, small company problem. Startups are moving really fast, brands are generally moving really slow. It's hard to solve that and explain that it's worth it, and it takes time. But when something really works, and you can show that it works, when I say works, I mean like they can see the purchases, I think that's when it starts to go. Like search, for instance. We're talking generally on this panel about mobile display and those type of technologies, but most of the dollars that are going into mobile right now are going into search. Same with the web. That I look at that as a demand fulfillment type of advertising, but clearly search works, and brands spend a lot of money on that. So I think it needs to see it work.
I think we'll hit it with the volume. Being in the mobile space for such a long time, mobile's always been experimental budget, and so it hasn't really been pledged in large amounts of money. And so what we're dealing with is $100,000, and then generates small volume, right? You look at experimental technology. But the good thing is, competitors like Nestle's got boots on the ground for innovation, and they're just looking at new technologies. Procter & Gamble's got boots on the ground here in the valley. So does Anheuser-Busch, and then they started to develop that with you.
Yeah. We have time for one more question, as quick as possible. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sheree. I wanted to ask the panel about actually brands seeing what works. Lou, you mentioned earlier that data and analytics, brands are craving that information. How do you kind of gauge a campaign or some type of event that shows that something is working? What specifically are the things you're looking at? The number of likes, the number of shares? What are the things that really move the needle for you when you are considering a company that you want to work with or a new technology? What are the things that you look for specifically in an event?
So for myself in my role, because I deal with retail, like I mentioned, I look for what's going to drive traffic into my customer, or what's going to help me move units. So if it's a coupon, that's the call to action on the mobile device or the ad, then we're going to look at that and see like how many people are redeeming that, where I want them to redeem it. I think it just depends on the campaign, because every brand in our portfolio will have like different objectives, whether they're trying to go off after their loyal users to buy more of the product that they're buying, or if they're trying to get new users into the franchise. Like, it's just going to depend on the campaign, and that's why I think it's important when working with brands to really set those objectives out front, because really from year to year, like we see briefs come down from the brands all the time to help them execute their retail strategy, and all the brands have different objectives, and those tactics that you use will be different depending upon like what their objectives are.
Thank you all very much.
If you could join me if I could thank Alex and